I had a dream, and that's where this whole idea snowball started from. I had a dream that I was arguing with a girl from high school. There were some other people from high school there around. In this dream, I was arguing and won the argument. Checkmate. Then I woke up. Really has nothing to do with what was in the dream, but the girl that was in the dream. Now, I'm not going to name any names, and I was from a small school, but not that small. 80-something people in my graduating class. But I don't deduce that anybody would be able to tell who this girl was from listening to this. So, now, I graduated high school over 20 years ago. Somewhere in that 20 years, I had seen this girl again. And it saddened me. It broke my heart. I think you can maybe identify with a similar type of girl that you may know or may have known now, woman, that was once so innocent, so vibrant, so intelligent, and I guess more of a blank slate. When I had crossed paths again, I don't know how to put this politely, but they appeared much more worldly, well used, fallen victim to this culture that we live in. I don't believe coincidentally, when I got up this morning doing a morning Bible study, I came across the verse, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." You see, I didn't grow up a Christian. I grew up a heathen, and I grew up a poor boy in the South. Forgive me if you've heard my testimony before. This is only a very small portion of my testimony. But I grew up a poor boy in the South, did not grow up Christian, and I searched for meaning in life. I searched for happiness in life, joy in life, in all the wrong places. What culture told me would make me happy, filled with joy, the fulfillment of life, especially for a man in the South who grew up, let's just say politely, very low in the social strata. I got out of that small town. I got a prestigious, well-paying job, power, a fancy, to me, a very nice house in the California hills. I had multiple cars. I hate to admit, seeing multiple women. You see all the things, checking all the boxes, what culture and society said was going to make me happy. And I was miserable, depressed, to the point where I didn't want to live anymore. Hollow, empty, a husk of what I should have been. Much like that girl I remember. Why? Because this popular culture is garbage. It's hollow. It's empty. And if you value the things that this culture values, if you live the way that this culture wants you and tells you to live, you also are going to be hollow and empty and sad, just like this culture. I searched for meaning in all those things, and there's nothing in it. Nothing. How does Paul put it? He counts them as rubbish, some translations as dung, as excrement. That's what the culture has to offer. Garbage. Excrement. There's nothing in it. I'd trade it all for Christ. Well, thankfully, by God's grace, not because I deserved it, because I certainly didn't, and I certainly don't, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. By the grace of God, by His love, He chose me as a vessel of mercy. He poured into me when I was hollow, when I was empty, when I was in despair. That life that I had made a mess of, He gave me a new one, a new creation. And the term born again, I think, gets thrown around so much. Some people think it's just a cliche. I literally am as different from that man as an entirely new and different person. I don't recognize that person. I don't particularly like thinking about the old man that I was. This culture today, especially how I've heard it put, this hookup culture that started sometime in the sexual revolution. It's nothing new. It's been around since ancient times. It was disgusting then and it's disgusting now. Don't buy into the lie. Many parts of pop culture that are horrible, but I'm kind of zeroing in on this one today. Don't buy into the lie. There's nothing in it. It's hollow and empty, and if you go down that path, you'll be hollow and empty. I think a lot of men honestly do it because they're lonely. I certainly understand that. I've been there, I've lived that life, but you think it's lonely being alone? You know what is really lonely? Being next to somebody who doesn't care about you, who you are using and when they are using you, and they don't care about you. You're just a place filler, a distraction, a trinket, like a little kid that they're entertained with now, but when they get bored, they'll throw it aside and forget about it. That's a lonely existence. I said I became a Christian, and when I did, I became chaste. Chastity, I think, is a forgotten virtue, and what seemed to me like a very, very long time, I was chaste. And I did not break that until my wife and I were married. And it seemed to me like a very, very long time, as I'm sure you can imagine. But it was better. It was better than the garbage hookup culture. It was difficult going through it at the time. But I grew out of it. I grew going through it. And God blessed me with a wonderful wife. I'm so thankful for my wife. We've been married for years. Been married quite a while by God's grace. And she, honestly, especially when I was, let's say, living in the culture, probably not the girl that I would have picked, she's so much better. She is beautiful inside and out. She is smart. She challenges me in good, healthy ways. I'm very blessed to have my wife. And here's the thing about the modern hookup culture. The just be with whoever you want, no commitment. It'll be great, but it's not great. It's a lie. And here's why. Because that's not how you were designed. And I say designed for a reason. And when I was a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. When I became a Christian, I saw real wisdom. Not the garbage, taciturn, wishy-washy. Truth is whatever you want it to be. Whatever you feel like. If you feel like this thing, then you can be that thing. And if you feel like this is love, then that's love. No. You don't decide what truth is. That lies outside of your scope as a man. But hopefully we can realize truth. The one who made truth. Almighty God. One of the many truths that our culture has forsaken. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. And God also said, now I'm going to read from Matthew the words of Jesus. Jesus is quoting the Torah. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined, let no man separate. It's better the way God designed it. And to go away from God's original is perversion. That's actually what the word perversion means, to go away from the original, to go away from the design. You're not going to be happy. Sure, there's pleasure. I'm not going to lie about that. There's pleasure in just sleeping around. I won't say that. There's pleasure in it, but that's one of the big turning points when I went from actually seeing wisdom, that pleasure is not happiness. Pleasure is not joy. Pleasure is fleeting and taciturn and hollow. I'll give you an easy extreme example. Heroin. Now, I've never done heroin by God's grace, but I don't think anybody would deny that somebody that does heroin gets pleasure from the heroin. That's why they do it. They get extreme physical pleasure, at least at first. But where does that lead you? Where does that existence, where does following down that path of doing heroin lead you in a year, in 2 years, in a decade of habitually giving in to that pleasure? Does that lead to happiness or joy or peace or a good life? No, because pleasure is not joy. It's not happiness. It's not a fulfilled life. The point of your life is not to seek pleasure after pleasure after pleasure. From one fleeting thing to another, from one shiny Babylonian bauble to another, from one person to another, using them for your own pleasure. That's not how you were designed, and you're never going to be truly happy that way. Ask me how I know. Getting back to marriage, getting back to that verse, this can make you happy and fulfill you because it's how God designed you. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. Now, I'm not going to lie. Marriage is not always easy. Honestly, we're talking about just easy. Probably easier just to hook up with a girl and throw her away when you get tired of her. But it's not good. Marriage, at times, can be a great struggle. And I can't imagine going through it without God. I can't imagine a marriage ever working for me before I was a Christian. Marriage is a hard thing. I can't imagine it without God at the center of it. But He belongs at the center of your marriage, of your life, of everything. He is the center. But marriage, although not easy, and at times is a great struggle, it's worth it. You can find happiness in a good marriage. It won't always be roses and sunshine, but it also won't be hollow and superficial. I'm not aware of any marriage without some kind of friction or disagreements, but you work through those. It's a good thing. It makes you, well, it's a better way because it's the way God designed it. And no matter how much culture tries to change it, they can't compare to it. No matter how many beautiful women, I literally lost count and can't remember names. No matter how many, it will never compare to being in a committed relationship to your wife. Not somebody that you say you're committed to. Not somebody that you say, oh yeah, you mean something to me. But there's no actual commitment there. You can just toss them aside whenever you want. But when you stand up before God and take an oath to that person, and you mean it, and you're in it thick and thin, you can actually be honest with a person, when you can actually be committed, when a woman can, by God's grace, look to you for safety and security and trust, that's so much more fulfilling as a man. Because that's how you were designed. Don't settle for a cheap counterfeit. Don't settle for popular culture. Perhaps popular culture shouldn't be so popular with us. I did an episode a while ago called Have Dominion. And I had a listener reach out to me and they said they were honest with me. And they said they were struggling in that area. They were doing good in a bunch of other areas, money, health, all those areas, but they were sucked into what they called, and this is where I got the term, the hookup culture, and he was struggling with it. I tried to check in with him a couple of times after that, and he stopped communicating. I hope that he persevered in that. But discipline, self-control, is a good, manly, godly thing. Having dominion, being in control. That includes your body. That includes lust. That includes what you look at. That includes so many things. It even includes what you think about. And fleeting thoughts pop in and out, but what you think on, what you choose to stew on in your mind, that likewise is part of discipline and self-control. What you choose to think about, what you choose to consume. And I do mean also like food, like have dominion over that as well. Don't just eat whatever. Your body is a gift from God. Treat it as such. Self-discipline in food, yes. And what you consume that way, but what you consume with your eyes. Again, the words of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. Careful what you consume, men, especially in this culture. It's hard to get away from. And although the vectors for vice might be different, TikTok or whatever lurks in the dark corners of the internet, the depravity itself is nothing new. This new revolutionary sexual revolution culture, it's not. It's a packaged, wrapped in shiny new cellophane, old pile of dung. It's filthy. It's nothing new, though. You read about the debauchery of the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans. Go back even further. Go back to the Old Testament, to the Torah. Look at what the other nations were doing. Now, this is at the end of a very long list of sin that God is talking about. Oh, by the way, this is from Leviticus 18. Moreover, you shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife, to defile yourself with her, and you shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Moloch, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is abomination. Nor shall you mate with an animal to defile yourself with it, nor shall any woman stand before an animal to mate with it. It is perversion. Do not defile yourselves with any of these things, for by all these the nations are defiled, which I am casting out before you. And that's thousands of years ago. Ancient times. Look at the depravity there. It's nothing new. This culture taking this old garbage and repackaging it in new, shiny packaging, showing you images on a glass rectangle you hold in your hand, or singing about filthy, disgusting debauchery in pop music, even in country music, about going to honky-tonks and hooking up, and it's buying into that same garbage, filthy culture. Does it matter if you're committing the same sins if you're wearing cowboy boots and a cowboy hat versus leather pants and a fedora? It's still gross. Think about some of the lyrics in songs today. It doesn't make them good because they sing in a pretty voice. This means they're using some of the beautiful talents God's given them for horrible things. Taking something disgusting and singing about it beautifully does not make the thing beautiful. Our culture is so steeped, soaked with, saturated with this debauchery, garbage, perversion. But the first verse quoted today, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Don't be conformed to this world, because there's a better way. From somebody that's been down that road and know that it leads to hollowness and emptiness and sadness and depression and despair. Because you're chasing the wrong things, you're valuing the wrong things, you're putting your hope in an empty, hollow idol of pleasure There's a better way. There's a right way. There's a true way. And it may not be the popular way in today's culture, but it's the right way. It's a better way. Again, from the Gospel of Matthew, and I didn't plan this out. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. The culture today, that debauchery, that emptiness, that's the many. That's the broad, easy way. Just to go from fleeting pleasure to fleeting pleasure. That might be popular culture. Doesn't mean it should be your culture. We're called to be holy. Holy means literally set apart. Narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy life. I'm saying it's going to be a better life. If you're ready for a better life, I submit again, perhaps popular culture ought not be so popular with you. With that, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.